Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to give my Friday reads. It's been a little while since I've checked in with what I'm currently reading and what I've recently read, so let's just get into it. So since the last time I checked in, I have finished The Toss of a Lemon by Padma Viswanathan, and this is a book I talked about quite a bit in December. It's a historical fiction that takes place in India. From 1900 on through like the 1950s. It follows 3 generations of the same Brahmin family in rural India, and it was absolutely delightful. Lots of things happen, as often do in family dramas, but it wasn't a book that wallowed in misery. There was lots of funny moments, lots of light moments, lots of heartwarming moments mixed in with the moments of sadness, and it was just the perfect thing to read at the end of the year when I was busy and stressed. So absolutely loved this historical fiction. And also, I buddy read this with Joe Smith, and that was our first buddy read together, and that was an amazing experience, and I can't wait to do more buddy reads with Joe. Then I finished on the last day of the year, Good Talk by Mira Jacob. You will have seen me talk about this in my top reads of 2019 video for nonfiction. This book was amazing. This is a graphic memoir, and it is all basically conversations that the author has with her husband, with her son, with her family, with her friends about race, immigration, and other difficult issues that we face today in our society. Mira Jacobs is a brown woman. She married a white man who's Jewish, and they have a son who's mixed race, and it's all about how those identities intertwine and the impacts that they have in this post 9/11 world in America. This book made me cry. This book made me laugh. It is so powerful, and it just goes to show what amazing things graphic novels can bring. They are excellent literature no matter what anybody might think, and this book is an excellent example of the genre. I recently finished this nonfiction, The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming by David Wallace-Wells. And this book was really good. It is not too long, and it's all about what is likely to happen given the fact that we can no longer avoid the impacts from global warming and climate change. David Wallace-Wells basically goes through the first half of the book. He goes through all different things that are going to be impacted from heat, hunger, drowning, wildfire, freshwater problems, dying oceans, plagues, economic issues, blah, blah, blah. All the things that are going to be impacted by a warming Earth. And the thing that this book does really well, this book's not a feel-good book at all, but it is a realistic book, and that's what I appreciated about it very much. And basically, David Wallace-Wells he thinks people need to stop looking away from the problem. It's awfully easy to just, especially those of us that live in wealthy Western nations, to just look away from the problem and not consider all of the ramifications of a warming world. And another excellent point that he continually makes is the Earth itself is going to be fine. It's just a matter of what's surviving on that Earth, and humans at a certain point will not be able to survive on this Earth. And it's not anything that's going to happen, immediately or anything like that, but certainly, and the big question becomes, since we all accept at this point, minus a small segment of the world's population that doesn't believe that global warming is happening, most people accept that global warming is happening and climate change is happening. The big question is, what are we going to do about it? As humans, what are we going to do about it? There's many actions that can be taken, but the things that need to happen at such a high level, at the national and international level, and when are we going to get the collective will to make those changes that need to be made? I thought this was excellent, a really great read. You can see I've tabbed some. I took tons of notes while I was reading this. I learned a lot about all aspects of our habitat, basically, as if you consider the whole earth our habitat. So very good book, and I highly recommend it. I then did have one bail. I did not finish. I was told there'd be cake. Essays by Sloane Crossley. I started to listen to this book on audio. I got through like the first 3 or 4 essays, and it just wasn't holding my attention. I just was not interested. This book, well, I'll just read you the summary on the back. From accidentally despoiling an exhibit at the Museum of Natural History to sicking the cops on the wrong neighbor, Sloane Crossley can do no right, despite the best of intentions, or perhaps because of them. In a sharp, original storytelling style that confounds expectations at every turn, Crossley recounts her victories and catastrophes. So it's supposed to be humorous. I didn't find it funny. I didn't laugh once. I didn't find the voice compelling. I was just bored the whole time I was listening to it. And, you know, my goal for this year is to stop reading books that I'm not thoroughly enjoying. So this one's gonna leave my home at this point, and it's probably for somebody else, but it wasn't for me. I then did want to shout out one article in this issue of The Atlantic. This is the September 2019 issue of The Atlantic. And the very last article in this this issue is The Quickening by Leslie Jamison. And this is an essay in which Jamison recounts her experiences being pregnant and giving birth while remembering her struggles with anorexia when she was a college age, a teenager and early adulthood, college age person. And this essay, I have read some of Leslie Jamison's previous work. I read the Empathy Exams, and I thought that was an uneven essay collection. I didn't love it, but I could see that Jamison was a good writer. I just didn't think it was for me. Her voice was for me, but with this essay, I was really impacted. I'm a mother, I've had 2 children, and I didn't experience exactly the same struggles that Jamison did with that, or the same issues surrounding pregnancy and childbirth, but I could relate to a lot of what she was talking about. I thought she wrote about it beautifully in a very touching and impactful way, and especially weaving in her issues with food and control of her eating with being pregnant. I thought that was really brilliant. It was a really brilliant thematic choice, so I wanted to definitely shout that out. I will try to remember to link that article down below so you can go and check it out yourself. And now for what I'm I almost forgot. I did complete one other book, and it was an audiobook, and it was a short one. It was a novella, science fiction novella, and it is Artificial Condition by Wallace-Wells. This is book 2 in the Murderbot series. The first book in this series, All Systems Red, was one of my favorite fiction titles from 2019, and so I thought I'd start the new year off strong with a book I thought I would really, really like, and I did. I absolutely loved Artificial Condition. It was only about 3 hours on audiobook, but it was just so entertaining. I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to spoil it, but the Murderbot series are all about this Murderbot, who is a being of artificial intelligence in a body that looks human. This is a genderless Murderbot, and a lot of problems arise from the fact that people see him and think, I'm going to say him because that's just how the Murderbot is in my brain. People see them and assume that they are human, and they don't feel emotions or anything the way that humans do, but they do have there's some stuff going on there that's interesting with emotions and responsibility and what questions of what is humanity, all the while wrapped up into an action-packed science fiction sort of adventure. I love these. These are just great, and I can't wait to listen to the next one in the series. I'm also currently listening to Us Against You by Fredrik Backman. This is book 2 in the Beartown duology. Fredrik Backman, I just absolutely love his writing. This is translated from the Swedish, I think. And it is, the Beartown duology is basically a story about a town with a hockey team, and in this town, an act of sexual violence is perpetrated against a young girl, a teenager, and by a member of the hockey team, and then that action reverberates throughout the community. And what happens after that act of violence, that's the story that we're being told. And this second book, Us Against You, is the next, basically what happens next in that story. So I can't talk about it because I don't want to spoil anything to do with Beartown. But I will just say that this book, while ostensibly being about hockey and a small town community, is really about a lot more than that. It's about, it addresses questions of loyalty and community and what we do collectively as a group of humans when we see wrongs being done to other people. How do you stand up to that? Do you stand up to that? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? And it looks at all of those various shades of gray because people are so rarely black and white. And I really appreciate the themes of this story so much. I've cried, I've laughed. It's just a beautiful story. And I would definitely recommend both Beartown and Us Against You in audiobook. They're great in audio format. I'm also reading a mystery novel. This is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. And I have heard this compared to Kate Atkinson's Life After Life because of the regeneration theme that's happening in this book. I would say that this book, to me, is a combination of Agatha Christie and David Mitchell. If you liked David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas or The Bone Clocks, I think you should give this a try. I think this is awesome. This is a murder is going to happen in this country estate where there's a country, like people have come to this country estate for a party, and everybody's sort of stuck there on this estate, and this murder is going to happen, and one person is trying to figure out who's going to commit the murder, why the murder is happening, and solve everything before the murder takes place. And the day keeps happening again and again and again, and you get the story from different characters' perspectives as this one person's trying to solve the murder. It is fascinating, and it's a puzzle, and I am loving it. It is really, really fun to read. It is very confusing, and if you don't like sort of trying to solve a puzzle while you're reading a story, you probably won't like this book, but I'm finding it quite fun. I'm also reading Kaffir Boy, The True Story of a Black Youth's Coming of Age in Apartheid South Africa by Mark Mathabane. I'm buddy reading this with Doris for her South Africa theme this month. And this book is interesting in comparison with Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, because they both sort of take place, it's the same perspective, right? It's a black boy trying to grow up in South Africa under the rules of apartheid, under the violence that's happening with, when black people have literally no rights at all. They're not, they can't do anything. They can't even live in these slums around Johannesburg without a permit. This book takes place in a little bit earlier time frame than Born a Crime, and I will say that there's no humor in this book. Not like Trevor Noah talks about a difficult subject with a lot of humor, and this book just talks about a difficult subject. And the other issue that I'm having with this, while the themes and the information, the facts of what it would be like to be a black boy or a poverty-stricken black family growing up in in Alexandra, one of the slums around Johannesburg. Those are interesting, and I appreciate and am getting a lot out of that. But because Mark Mathabane's telling this story himself, and he's giving us all of this information from his own perspective from the time he's like a 3 and 4 year old child, the details that he is providing in this story, I find it hard to believe that he can actually remember all of that detail. You know, like how many times he wet himself when he was 3 years old when his father yelled at him or the police came. Like, I just feel like there's a lot, he's recalling a lot of detail that I find it hard to believe actually is him recalling it, is not just, he sort of knows the general broad strokes of his own narrative and then he's filling in these details for color, I think. And it might actually have been better if he had written this as a fiction, you know, just as a novel, and then he could have embellished the details all he wanted. But both Doris and I have been caught up in going, would you really remember that detail, you know, however many years later from when you were 3, 4, 5, 6 years old? Some of it, like the big things, yes, I believe he remembers, but some of these small details, I find it hard to believe he remembers. So that's my only quibble with this book. Otherwise, it reads very easily, and I'm learning a lot. I am also still working on Fraud of the Century, Rutherford B. Hayes, Samuel Tilden, and the Stolen Election of 1876. This is historical nonfiction, all about, as it says on the tin, the election of 1876, which was the first, you know, which goes to show you that elections shenanigans did not start in our modern day times. They were happening back in the 1800s and probably earlier. There's so many things that parallel today's political scene that it's quite disturbing to think about the fact that history keeps repeating itself. I am on page 93 of this book, which is, let's see where we are before notes, about 250 pages long. So this is my bedtime book, and I try to get, 10 or so pages done a night, so it'll be a little bit before I finish it, but it is good. And then last night, I couldn't resist. I just had been staring at me from my bookcase, and I couldn't resist it any longer. I picked up Midnight in Chernobyl, the untold story of the world's greatest nuclear disaster by Adam Higginbotham. I've heard nothing but great things about this nonfiction book about the meltdown of the nuclear reactor in Chernobyl. I just barely got started reading it. I'm only on page 16, but so far I am struck by, this is true narrative nonfiction. This book is giving you information while telling you a story, and I love that style of nonfiction, so super excited to continue on with that. So that's where I am. That's what I've been working on and what I've finished. I hope you've all been reading some great books, and let me know down in the comments below what's your best thing you've read so far in January, and I will talk to you later.